Hello, everyone. My name is Sabrina Young, and I'm with Young's Daughters Funeral Home and Bereavement Center. And I'm really excited to get to share a friend of mine. His name is Pastor Mike Snell of First Christian Church, and he has been a leader there for a little over 9 years. And I'm so excited to have him on today. So get ready to experience some congregational questions about when illness occurs and the rites and ceremonies of the church. So, Pastor Mike, thanks for coming on with us.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about what happens when a parishioner becomes terminally ill or is facing death. What should they expect being a member of your church?
Well, they will already be getting regular visits from me when it comes to that point. And so depending on how well they're feeling and what family members may want to talk to me, just in anticipating what is coming, any preliminary questions they have or conversations they want to have. Which also allows me to have that opportunity for an individual to pray with them and ask if there's anything they especially like prayer for. And so while we don't do usually formal confessions, that's when someone might share that they're struggling with an issue from their past. And so we just kind of try to talk and find resolution with those types of issues.
I think that's amazing that you can meet people where they are and actually hold their hands during those last times. And while they're transitioning, the comfort that comes from your direct pastor to have that honest friendship and reassurance. I definitely put my hat off to you for extending your services in that capacity. So sometimes death occurs to a parishioner, and sometimes you know directly, or maybe you heard through the grapevine within the church that a member has passed away. What should they do when they're experiencing a death right away?
The first thing to help the church is to probably let the church or myself know directly as soon as possible. That way we are aware. Sometimes family may be postponing the celebration service. They may have someone in their family who's going to be the minister. And that's perfectly fine, and wonderfully ways we can make that work as well. But just so we have a chance to let the family know that we will support them, even if they're not using a clergy person from the staff. But also then it gives us the opportunity to offer a meal, which we often do before or after a service, and get our people that do the organization that have time to get those things together and prepare a meal for the family.
I love how that's not only physically, replenishing, but spiritually replenishing the family strengths and desires. Being able to tailor services as so personal that you do, I think that's a huge asset to your church. Absolutely. So speaking about that, ceremonies, do's and don'ts. Some pastors and churches have certain things that are not accepted, or they are deterred from if you are planning your services. What are some things that are do's in your church, and what are some don'ts?
One thing that is helpful for the people of our church is that we actually have a pamphlet that is a funeral planning guide. Many people in our church already have these because we've given them out at church before. So if they want to take it home and write notes for family, should they die, knowing what some of their wishes might be. And within this, it kind of gives a lot of the expectations and ways to deal with those. An example, one of the things that I like to do in a service is to allow time, not just for the minister to go on about the individual's life, but to actually open it up if there's family members or someone who's unusually close to the person who has died, to be able to share some reflections, because typically the minister is not going to really know a childbirth story, a teenage story, a marriage story, a family story, a later in life story, if someone has been blessed enough to be able to experience all of those things over a duration of time. And so it's much more personal when they're able to do that. And so if they're able to, we're glad to open that up for people to be able to speak at the microphone. Also, if people are uncomfortable, but they want to share something, they can write it down and share it with me in advance. I'm glad to read it for them. And then if they just don't think they can, then I'm always glad to just sit and talk to family and take notes. And if they are going to speak, I typically ask them to bring me a paper copy. So I have a paper copy with me in case they are unable to finish because they become too emotional. That way I can just kind of pick up where they left off and try to make it as comfortable as it can be in the midst of a difficult situation. One thing we don't allow, or actually I don't allow, but I also strongly discourage, is just the open mic of anybody can get up and say things. I've seen in my own experience, I've seen people that were not wanted get up and say things. I've seen people who really just kind of talked about some inappropriate topics in that moment. And typically, I just don't think it does a lot to celebrate the person in that space. That can always be done at a time if the family really wants that. It's kind of a time of refreshment and that type of thing if they want to have something after the service.
I'm really glad that you say structure to words. Giving structure to words at a time that is most emotional is so valuable. And having them write their speeches ahead of time, because sometimes grief can make you go in crazy directions. And so having that organized and being there to fill in so quickly to be able to pick up where they're struggling. And that's your true leadership qualities that I've always loved about you ever since I met you, that you're always willing to serve the families and meet them and step in and lift them up. In doing that, many people don't know about our funeral home is when it comes to that, we try to capture when you are beginning your sickness stages and you're becoming ill or terminally ill, we try to capture in a video of your life and who you are, and that's being displayed inside our chapel. Many don't know that we actually have like a small IMAX movie screen, and so when that is played, you actually get to give your own testimony of, hey everyone, I know you're here at my funeral, to my wife, to my children, to my family, I want to leave this message with you. And then following up with those testimonies that you've shared, that these families have written down strategically, so that way we stay on a good course. I definitely commend you for following in and highlighting that to families. But sometimes they need more bereavement resources because grief is so hard. Tell me a little bit about, do you have any bereavement resources? Do you give personal counseling? How do you follow through with the families?
Typically, I personally follow up with the family maybe a week or 2 weeks after those that I have the most contact with and see how they're doing, if they have any special needs. And so if they request time, we're more than glad to give time for one-on-one counseling opportunities. We do not have formal classes at this time. And that's one of the gifts that your services provide, being able to give that grief share opportunity, because there are people that need that. And to be honest, sometimes people don't want to share that in a church setting. They may feel very private in nature and not want to be seen going in and out of a minister's office, or sometimes it's just such a personal thing to deal with death that it's helpful to have an outside resource like Young's Daughters do, which is offering that type of service.
Well, I appreciate that you've seen it and you're sharing it as a resource, because I do believe that everybody walks grief differently and they walk it so privately. Our culture has really, suppressed that emotion and being a taboo emotion. And so being able to collaborate and bring all of the community together in a resource like that, having biblical based classes that are comfortable for us as Christians, and then having other non-denominational ones. And it's great because they're at different times, so you can always get more from the different leaders. Some are pastor leaders and chaplains, some are lay leaders, some are just peer-to-peer groups. So we definitely encourage those classes, and they're definitely available. But I do want to leave all the viewers with your information. If you are interested in taking a tour of the church, Pastor Mike is always typically available, and he definitely wants to welcome you there. If a death is imminent or you are experiencing needing prayer, the church office line is 254-773-9061. And if you are experiencing an emergency and you're needing him directly, his cell phone number is 405-316-0206. And if you're just wanting to peruse through the website, that's going to be www.firstchristiantemple.org. So thank you so much. If you have any questions for the church, please leave them in the comments. I'll get with Pastor Mike afterward and try to get those questions answered for you, or you can call him directly there. So thank you so much, Pastor Mike, for being on with us.
Thank you, Sabrina. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, everybody like, share, subscribe, and do all that good stuff so that way we can walk grief together. Thank you so much for watching.